It's time for the BLEAV Podcast with your hosts, Alonso and Juan, Alicia Del Valle, and the babyface gimmick in the sky, Roger.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bleed Lows podcast as we're on the eve of the 2024 World Series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees. That said, we have a special BLEAV crossover episode with Lance Medow, host of BLEAV in Bronx. Lance, thank you for taking the time to join us today and discuss the highly anticipated matchup to some people between these two clubs.
Well, I think we could all agree it's highly anticipated. Doesn't matter what other people have to say, Cody. Roger, it's great to meet you guys and interact with you guys. I thank you for having me on, and I'm with you. I'm very much looking forward to this matchup. I think you couldn't have asked for more than having the two best teams in Major League Baseball collide for the ultimate prize, Dodgers being the best in the NL, the Yankees being the best in the American League, and let's throw it all out on the diamond and see how it shakes out.
And, you know, speaking of the Yankees, you know, last year they missed the playoffs. Obviously, they had some injuries. You know, Judge missed like almost all of the second half with the toe injury that he suffered at Dodger Stadium, coincidentally. They rebound well this year. Obviously, a big reason for that was, you know, Juan Soto. The offense was really good this year. And then even not having Garrett Cole for almost half a season with his elbow issues, you know, they still end up with the best record in the American League. They win the American League East. What's been the biggest difference between, you know, coming from last year and then coming to this year and then kind of just steamrolling the American League when, you know, the Astros get knocked out in the first round? I know a lot of Yankees fans were scared about that team still just in the back of their head. But what's been the biggest difference between last year and this year?
Well, Cody, I think you alluded to it. I think it starts with health. I think they're a healthier group overall. Now, granted, Garrett Cole was banged up and Clark Schmidt, they didn't have them for portions of the season. But I think overall the lineup held up. And that was key. They had Aaron Judge, who was masterful in terms of his production with respect to home runs. But also, I think he proved that he is an all-around hitter. Now, people look at the home run total this season, but Judge was hitting for average, singles, doubles, playing really great defense. And that meant a whole lot to the squad. Gleyber Torres had an up-and-down first half of the season. The second half of the season, automatic, getting on base. And Juan Soto is a new addition who they didn't have at their disposal last season. So right there, those are 3 key ingredients that they weren't necessarily relying on last season. I also think that the bullpen has held up nicely this season, has really started to play its best baseball towards the latter part of the year, has carried that over into the postseason. All of these elements were not necessarily present or at least consistent and reliable, to your point, throughout the course of the 2023 season. And even Aaron Boone has been asked that question time and time again throughout the playoffs. And he says he thinks this is the most talented group he's had, actually, since he was the manager of the team. And he thinks that it's a much healthier unit even during the playoffs right now, if you were to compare them to where they were at this time in 2022 when they were trying to solve the Astros riddle, as you hit on, and so forth. So I think the combination of health and timely hitting from their big name batters is a big reason why they're standing 4 games away from winning a World Series.
You know, you look at the Dodgers and the Yankees, this is a rivalry that goes all the way back to the, you know, the 1940s when they've met constant times in the World Series. This is the 12th meeting between two clubs, but it's the first time in over 40 years that they've met. So obviously that's the reason why it's a big story right now. You know, if you ask Rob Manfred in the interviews I've seen him do, he's very giggity about this matchup in terms of, you know, the viewership that's not only going to get in the US, but in Japan as well. And both teams have, you know, ties to the Japanese culture there as well. Looking at this matchup, how big is it for baseball and how good is it for baseball?
I think it's fantastic for baseball. I've talked about this even on my Sirius XM shows. I think the ratings are going to skyrocket. I think they're going to actually set records. I would be surprised if the opposite happened, because mainly what you were hitting on, Cody, is the fact that you've got a great distribution in this matchup. Forget the fact that the Yankees and the Dodgers have history, as you noted, and also the Dodgers have ties to the New York area when they started here in Brooklyn. So that adds another layer. But you have representatives on opposite coasts. You have New York and Los Angeles covered. You have two of the biggest markets, not just in terms of sports, but in this country related to anything. So I think that helps the national audience. Even if you're not invested in the Yankees or the Dodgers, you figure that the middle of the country can either side with the Dodgers if they despise the Yankees and they take pride in watching the Yankees suffer. And then I'm sure San Francisco Giants fans, for example, will be invested in it and they'll be rooting for the Yankees. So I think even if, once again, you're not tied to any of these franchises, you maybe have a reason to tune in. Not to mention, the icing on the cake is each team's got a 50 home run hitter with Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, and you have names. You have superstars. I mean, look at the Dodgers lineup. My goodness. I think the Dodgers lineup is actually more dangerous than the Yankees, because you look at their 6 through 9 hitters. Show me another group in baseball where the 6 through 9 hitters can be as dangerous or more deadly than lineups of 1 through 4 across Major League Baseball. So from that standpoint, I think it kicks off every check mark imaginable that you would want if you're not, once again, a diehard fan on the Dodgers and the Yankees side. So I think when we see the ratings, when they're all said and done, I think, once again, we may be talking about record viewership from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I don't think it's hard, to state that it's definitely going to beat last year's World Series, and that's not to discredit, the Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers, because the Rangers, especially, and I've mentioned this before, they did have stars. They opened the pocketbook the last 2 to 3 off seasons. Obviously DeGrom was the first one; he wasn't there due to health, but they had Corey Seager, Dodgers postseason hero. He was there. Marcus Semien was there. Garcia, he's kind of, last year what he did gave him some popularity as well, but it's the Dodgers and the Yankees, and that's when I look at it at face value. The two most well-known franchises in the sport. I don't think you can beat that right there. So I'm actually really interested, once this is all said and done, and Fox has the statistics after the games, after the series concludes. I'm interested to see where it ranks, because I don't think it's a stretch to say it's going to be the best in probably maybe like 15 years.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head the last time we even had this much buzz surrounding a World Series matchup. I mean, I know the Dodgers obviously have been in a few of them in recent history. This is their 4th in 8 years, and you could point to Dodgers Astros or some of the other recent matchups. But as you guys know, there's something about the Yankees and there's something about the Dodgers. There's just something different that both of these organizations and franchises bring to the table, especially given the high volume of appearances that the Yankees have had, the volume of wins they've had, and the fact that they haven't been there since 2009. I think that's another thing that adds a little bit more punch and substance. Not to take anything away from the Dodgers, but the bigger storyline is it's the Yankees getting back to the World Series. Okay, that's great. But you ask anyone associated with that organization, they're not content with getting the participation trophy. If George Steinbrenner was still alive, he wouldn't be reserving the Canyon of Heroes because they won the AL pennant. He's going to want, obviously, the finished prize. So that's another thing that I don't think we've seen in recent history with some of the other participants who have been in the World Series. So the more and more we analyze this, I mean, I could sit here till we're all blue in the face and we could find 75 other different elements to bring to the forefront that I think makes this matchup very attractive.
Roger, jump in here now.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, to see this matchup, Yankees, Dodgers, hasn't happened since '81. I was very young when that, and I still remember, when the Dodgers won that championship. But to me, it seemed really odd that these huge franchises, right, have not met in a World Series in over 40 years when they met for 5 decades, right? 40, 50, 60, 70, 80s. They met in all those decades, right? So to see them now to actually come and meet, I think it's great for the game. And I get people that don't like the Dodgers, don't like the Yankees, are like, oh, that's the worst matchup. But no, it's the best matchup. And the way it's played out, I mean, they've gotten almost 5 days off right before it's actually going to happen in that thanks in part to because the Dodgers had to go an extra game. If they would have won that game, this would have started on Tuesday. If it would have felt kind of like everything just came together really fast, but now it kind of feels like maybe like a Super Bowl leading up to a Super Bowl week. You know, you have a week. Today's media day. Aaron Boone was talking today. I mean, I want to get into some of those comments. Aaron Boone mentioned today. He was talking about the rotation and Nestor Cortez, if he's gonna pitch or not. How do you see this rotation? Because I mean, a lot of people are saying obviously Yankees, they have a really good rotation, and the Dodgers, that's where they kind of lacked. So how do you see the Yankees rotation coming up? Do you think Cortez is actually going to pitch? Or are they going to carry an extra pitcher and get him in there?
Well, I do think Cortez will be on the roster. Based on what Aaron Boone said, he's confident that he's now healthy after missing the first 2 rounds with the elbow flex strainer. So I think it's a valuable addition. Whether or not they start him remains to be seen, because he was a valuable component to the rotation. 31 appearances, 30 were starts. And he did have the ability to come out of the bullpen in long relief when they were sort of tweaking the rotation. So if you want to eat up innings, Nestor Cortez is the guy, and you have no hesitation in terms of throwing him out there. If you're asking me my personal opinion, Roger, I do think they should give him a start, because I think the Yankees are more dangerous with him being out there as opposed to Luis Gil, who is a candidate for Rookie of the Year, but Gil has been up and down and tends to walk a lot of guys. I think Cortez has better control. So the fact that everyone's going to have to go with 4 arms, I mean, I know the Dodgers may do some bullpen by committee stuff, which we saw throughout the playoffs, but the Yankees went with 4 arms in the last round against Cleveland. So you have Gerrit Cole, you have Carlos Rodon, Clark Schmidt, and to me, Nestor Cortez makes the most sense for the 4th guy. But I don't know whether or not Aaron Boone is leaning there, and he says to himself, maybe I just want Cortez to eat up innings and be able to utilize him a few times during the series, as opposed to maybe 1 start. I could see him go both ways, but if it was in my ballpark, my decision would be Cortez would be my 4th starter, and Gil would be an arm that I would bring out of the bullpen. But no matter how you want to spin it, none of these guys outside of Cortez have a lot of experience coming out of the bullpen. So that may be the reason why Cortez becomes the jack of all trades type of pitcher. As far as the overall rotation, I agree with you. I think they're in better shape than the Dodgers. That's on paper, though. Okay? In terms of performance, it's been a little Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, this Yankees starting rotation. Gerrit Cole has had performances where he looks like an ace, and then he's had performances where you have no idea what you're going to get out of him. You look at what he did in the Kansas City series. 1 really good start to help close things out. The first one was not too much to brag about. And then against Cleveland, he didn't look great. So we've got 3 sample sizes, right, in the postseason, and I don't know what he's going to show in game 1. I think that's very much up in the air. Rodon was emotional in his first start against the Royals. I think since then he's settled down because he's talked to some former Yankees. He's got 15 strikeouts under his belt in the last 2 series. So I think that bodes well for him in terms of his command and his control. Clark Schmidt went 4 2/3. So we don't have a lot to work with him. And then Gil, as I mentioned, was a little bit up and down. So I think the Yankees, they have depth over the Dodgers in terms of starting rotation-wise, but I don't know if they have 4 guys that I could tell you they're all going to go 7 innings, they're all going to have great control, and they're all going to be able to shut down this Dodgers lineup. That's still very much a mystery, and it's all about performance. You could have the arms. If the guys don't deliver, it really doesn't make much of a difference at the end of the day.
So sticking on the pitching side, so as we mentioned, right, they probably have the advantage on the starting side, but we've seen the Dodgers bullpen. I mean, just extraordinary what they've been doing through this playoff run. When you look at the Yankees bullpen, how are you looking at that side of the bullpen? Is that as strong as their starting pitching, or compared to the Dodgers? How do you think they match up bullpen wise?
I think the bullpen's been better than the starting rotation. They went through a stretch of 15 2/3 innings where they did not give up an earned run against Kansas City, and I think they picked up where they left off in the Cleveland series. Luke Weaver has been solid, taking over the closer role after they took Clay Holmes out of that position, and that goes back to the regular season. His one hiccup, of course, was the 3rd game against Cleveland when he gave up the home run to Noel, and Cleveland was able to rally and win that game. But he bounced back. Tommy Kahnle has been solid as a setup guy. I think even Holmes has been good as a setup guy. He's had some ups and downs, but he's at least been more comfortable outside of the closer role. Mark Leiter Jr. was a pleasant surprise. They added him late to the roster against Cleveland. He was an injury replacement, and you have him not only eating up innings, but inheriting tough spots. 2 on, 2 out, and he gets the job done. And the one blemish on his resume was when he tried to get an underhand flip to Anthony Rizzo. I didn't think there was anything wrong with the throw. It went right through Rizzo's legs and cost an opportunity to seal a game against Cleveland, making it a little bit more interesting. But these bullpen guys have answered the call. So I think the Dodgers and the Yankees bullpen could neutralize one another. That's why if you were to ask me, I think the biggest difference right now is the ability for the Dodgers to score runs religiously, whereas the Yankees are dangerous, don't get me wrong, but New York has yet to score 9-10 runs in a game. The Dodgers could do that in the blink of an eye. Everybody talks about pitching, right? Around the postseason in the World Series. I'm going to go against the norm. I actually think this is which offense performs more consistently, which offense showcases more power, which offense and lineup delivers. And the Dodgers have proven, they could give you 8 to 10 runs. The Yankees, you look at the Royals and the Guardian series, they had 8 runs once. Outside of that, it's been in the 4 to 6 run territory. The Dodgers can easily outdo that game in and game out. So I think the onus is on Gleyber Torres, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. If that lineup, that portion of the lineup can give you home runs and big clutch hits every single game, they can match wits with the Dodgers. If they can't do that, then I think the Dodgers are going to put a lot of pressure on the Yankees in this series.
You mentioned, the offense for the Dodgers, a big reason why they've scored so many of these runs, especially, if runners are on base, Shohei Ohtani's doing a stretch right now that's kind of just, unfathomable. You wouldn't think of it happening, something like 18 for 24 with his last 24 at bats with runners on. Obviously, the Padres, they acquired some lefty relievers to kind of go against it. Tanner Scott really had his number in the NLDS. I think Ohtani went 0 for 4, 0 for 3, all strikeouts. The Mets, whenever opportunity they had lefties in the starting rotation with, Minaya, and then, had David Peterson kind of popping in the rotation and then popping in the bullpen. When I look at the Yankees bullpen, one guy that's in there that kind of, is a little funky is Tim Hill with the, Submariner arm action. Is that a guy that's going to be used more often? Because if you look at his total innings this postseason, it's not super high, but it's a guy that since, the Yankees acquired him in this season, he's been very valuable for them. If he's not the guy, who are you thinking that the Yankees are going to try to use to attack Ohtani, especially with the game on the line in the later innings?
Well, it's interesting you brought up the whole lefty type of situation because I'll bring back Nestor Cortez, who we were talking about earlier in the conversation, Cody. This is where Aaron Boone has to say to himself, is Cortez more valuable to me with one start, or I pick and choose where I want to utilize him? And that's where that could be an X factor, because my response would be Cortez is the new blood. He's somebody that the Royals didn't see, the Guardians didn't see. And if they want to try to offset some of these Dodgers hitters and they want to get him to showcase his stuff and they're more than comfortable with him doing it once or twice around the rotation in the lineup, Cortez to me answers the call. I don't think Tim Hill is going to be a turn two guy left and right for Aaron Boone. I'd be very surprised. Doesn't mean that he's not going to be utilized, but I think Cortez becomes a bit of a wild card. I think Leiter infuse some confidence in himself for Aaron Boone to certainly be brought in on consecutive days and so forth. And then I think Tommy Kahnle is a guy that I could see them turning to more so than Tim Hill. And it's interesting because Kahnle's last appearance, all he did was throw changeups. But the bottom line is he got the job done. So he's been a reliable arm throughout the regular season. And then, of course, you have Clay Holmes and Luke Weaver. Here's the thing about Aaron Boone. Aaron does not shy away, as we've seen, to have Weaver come in the 8th and then go back out for the 9th. In this day and age, they don't want to overdo it with pitchers because everybody's so ultra sensitive. Oh no, if he goes above a certain pitch count. He doesn't worry about Weaver. Weaver has recorded 5-out saves. So if he can build a bridge with the starting rotation giving him, let's say, in the ballpark of about 6 innings, maybe he uses a Nestor Cortez and then goes straight to Weaver in certain circumstances. That's why I think Weaver is a bit of the unknown who can prove to be valuable, because if he doesn't start him, he can use him in inning, 2 innings, maybe even 3 innings, and then you don't have to turn to you brought up some of these mix and match relievers. You could just basically have 2 starters get to your closer. I could certainly see him adopt that philosophy.
Coming into this matchup, I don't think it's a stretch to say that the Dodgers are, the biggest or the most talented team that this Yankees team has had to face in October. I mean, not to discredit the Royals or the Guardians, but, their OPS, they ranked in the second half of the league in terms of OPS. So pitching wise there, it was understandable why a lot of those games, if the Yankees were blowing them out, they were very low scoring or at least close enough. Coming into this, do you need to see the Yankees offense and the pitching, play a little bit more cleaner or step up their game? Because they haven't faced a team like the Dodgers right now. You mentioned, the Dodgers offense has been relentless this October, something that I've never even seen, especially even in this current postseason run, averaging 6.5 runs per game. I mean, that's just unheard of this time of the year. So what are you expecting from these Yankees, pitchers to do to the team? And how do you expect the hitters to capitalize off the Dodgers, maybe suspect starting rotation or an overworked bullpen?
Well, I think you hit on what I'm watching very closely in this series. I completely agree with you. I think, once again, it's going to come down to the Yankees offense and what they can do on a consistent basis. I'll take it a step further, and this is no disrespect to the Royals and the Guardians. I think you were alluding to this. The Yankees are going from the JV level to the varsity level, guys. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here, okay? And I'm not saying this because I'm on a Dodgers podcast and I want Dodgers fans to like me. That's the reality of the circumstance. The Dodgers lineup is that much more of a bigger threat than anything that Kansas City or Cleveland could pose, because you look at Kansas City and Cleveland 6 through 9 hitters, I'm sorry, they don't match what the Dodgers have to offer. And the best way I could put it is, and I've said this on numerous shows, and I don't know if you guys even felt this way. If I were to ask you, who is likely going to win NLCS MVP for the Dodgers, assuming they got past the Mets? How many of you would have said Tommy Edman? I mean, Tommy Edman is the last guy that I would have mentioned. And once again, it's no disrespect to him. It was a nice addition. They got at the trade deadline from the Cardinals, but I'm probably mentioning Shohei Ohtani, and then I'm getting to Mookie Betts, and then I'm bringing in maybe Max Muncy, and maybe he's 5th or 6th on the list. So if that doesn't show you what the Dodgers are capable of doing, I don't know what does. Now, in terms of the Yankees, Gleyber Torres and Juan Soto should scare the living hell out of the Dodgers starting pitchers, okay? And this is why, guys. If you look at just the Guardian series, and I was looking closer at the numbers, the 2 of them got on base safely in the first inning in 4 of the 5 games, both of them. That means that any Cleveland pitcher knew, I'm already going into the game and I've got 2 on and nobody out. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. The only time that didn't happen was game 4 when Torres walked and Soto flied out to center. That was it. So that's going to be a problem for the Dodgers starting rotation. You do not want to give them big threats early on. It's amazing to me how relentless, which is a term you use to describe the Dodgers, I would agree with you, but it really is fitting for Torres and Soto, because these guys are so well disciplined at the plate. They don't need to make contact. They will force the pitchers to continue to work the count, and they're not going to take anything that they don't like. And that's why the other thing that's dangerous, and this is a statistic that to me was somewhat even, because I believe the Dodgers drew 20 walks in the final 3 games of the series against the Mets alone, which is ridiculous. Well, the Yankees drew 27 walks against the Royals, 22 against Cleveland. That's the hiccup that the Dodgers have to avoid. If you're going to walk the ballpark, the Yankees are going to say, thank you very much. We'll stand here all day and wait till you deliver in the strike zone. That's what makes them somewhat of a danger and a counter to the Dodgers if the walks increase. But if they got to go hit to hit, that's not where the Yankees have done a lot of production. It's been more of stay well-disciplined, get the free bases, and try to get good offerings for other guys in the lineup. That's the area that if I'm the Dodgers, I'm focusing on. If they have control and they don't give free bases to the Yankees, okay, they're going to get a home run or two, the Yankees, but you're doing much more damage control than what Kansas City and Cleveland were unable to do.
Yeah, the offense is it's eerily similar between these two clubs. And you mentioned Juan Soto. That guy scares the living hell out of me ever since 2019 when he hit the home run off of Kershaw. I've from him playing in San Diego, last 1.5 seasons. Us Dodger fans, we know what we're going to expect. Baseball fans in general, that dude he is so patient up there. That home run he hit off to send the Yankees to the World Series. He knew every single pitch that was coming and jumped on it as soon as he got the pitch that he wanted to hit, which was a high and away fastball. Change up, nothing. Soto shuffle right in your face. That guy just lives and breathes plate discipline. And the Dodgers, they do the same exact thing. They walk the Mets to death and then they capitalize on the opportunities. Both of these offenses play the same. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how both pitching staffs attack. Because I don't think the Dodgers walk a ton of guys. I don't think the Yankees really, try to put men on base either. If anything, the Yankees pitch selection, they're very change up and sinker usage. So they kind of get a lot of weak contact and ground balls, maybe some pop flies. But that's going to be the storyline I'm going to be watching this entire series.
Yeah, once again, it comes down to discipline. And when we say discipline, we're not just talking about the batters, we're talking about the pitchers, as you were hitting on. And I think the Yankees and the Dodgers have been better in terms of not walking the ballpark and not giving free gifts. But all it takes is one of these two staffs to struggle because they weren't used to what they've seen previously based on what the Dodgers lineup and the Yankees lineup has to offer. But, I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers that closely for Ohtani and the rest of the top of the lineup for the Dodgers, but I wouldn't say they're matching what Torres and Soto have done so consistently. So to me, what's going to be key is, can you avoid getting into early jams? And if you can, then that could certainly create some wiggle room for both pitching staffs so that they can last deeper into games. I mean, that's the other thing that has just been a head scratcher to me and a bit of a frustrating development. I would say big picture in baseball, it's that managers, they have the itch to just grab the hook and pull the guy out and not allow him to maybe work out of trouble. Cleveland was like that. Stephen Vogt, manager of the Guardians, 1 2/3 innings, get rid of the guy, bring in the bullpen. I like to see the starter eat up some innings, especially if he hasn't been terrible. But, when you start pulling pitchers out and they're only up to 50 pitches, I'm saying to myself, what's going on here? And I know Dave Roberts has relied a lot on the committee approach, but I think he's going to have to get a few guys to milk some innings as opposed to maybe what he's done in previous matchups here.
Roger, I'll shoot to you for, one last question before we wrap it up here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely what you said. I think he needs to have, Flaherty in game one. He needs to give him innings 6, 7, right? Because Yamamoto, we don't know what we're going to get from Yamamoto. He's been going maybe about 4 or 5. So that's in that first game. I think that is the key where they got to get innings so they're not going into that bullpen so early and start using those guys. But I want to know what is it the Dodgers can take advantage. If the Dodgers are going to win this series, what are they going to take advantage? I know the Yankees, they started off best team in baseball, then they hit a funk, right? What happened in that funk that caused, for them to kind of have the bad month or whatever it was, right? Is that something that can still, I don't know what it was, pitching, whatever, hitting. Is that something that the Dodgers can exploit here in this World Series?
Well, to answer your question, Roger, when they hit their funk, and they did have a stretch where they were losing to also bad teams, teams that were not good in the standings, like the Colorado Rockies and the Washington Nationals. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. The pitching staff can be very shaky. And I'm talking about the starters, not the bullpen. That's where they hit their funk, meaning you would have Carlos Rodon go out for one day and look fantastic. Then his next outing, he would get hammered. And it would be the same thing with a few of their other pitchers. Garrett Cole, too, very up and down. So to answer your question, the door swings wide open for the Dodgers. I mean, they don't need gifts because I think they can manufacture opportunities themselves, even if the Yankees pitch well. But it swings wide open for them if they don't get consistency, the Yankees, out of their starting rotation. And Garrett Cole has had some issues with his command. We saw that against Cleveland. We saw that against Kansas City. If you struggle against the Guardians, that's one thing. You do that against the Dodgers. I mean, good luck trying to regroup under those circumstances. And I mean, I could go up and down with all of the arms. So that's one way. And then the other thing that contributed to the funk was the bats. Aaron Judge went through a stretch where he wasn't hitting home runs. And, Juan Soto was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Jazz Chisholm was just added as a late addition to the lineup. So they've had a feeling out process in terms of who are the go-to guys. Anthony Rizzo got hurt, and he recently returned. They were sort of feeling out who are our turn to guys. And that was simultaneous to the pitching going up and down. Now, I think to circle back, there is much more stability with this team, Roger, now compared to if I was talking to you in late July and August. So they've overcome some of those hurdles. The one to me, though, that remains is you still don't know with this starting rotation what's going to happen game in and game out. And if the Yankees, just look at it through this perspective, if Aaron Boone can't get his starters to go deep into games, that means that he's going to turn to the bullpen earlier. And this is what came back to bite Cleveland. Stephen Vogt used the bullpen so much because the starters barely gave him anything. I mean, he had one guy that went beyond 5 innings. So what happens? And this is where I would say the Yankees and the Dodgers could benefit. You start seeing the same relievers over and over again. You get used to seeing their stuff. Case in point, Emmanuel Clase, who was the best closer in the American League this season, right? The Yankees hammered him. Well, why did they hammer him? Because they saw him on consecutive days. So it's not an awe-inspiring, oh my goodness, what are we going to get out of him? It's, what to expect. So if you see more of the Yankees relievers, you see Holmes, you see Weaver, you see Canely, now all of a sudden the Dodgers become that much more comfortable. Vice versa, the opposite way. That's why it goes into the starting rotation for the Yankees will determine and dictate how consistent and how strong they will be in helping offset the power of that Dodgers lineup.
You're muted, Roger.
I have that effect on people where normally I speak and then they don't know how to respond. So it's understandable, Roger. Yeah.
It's incredible how much these two teams mirror each other, right? The offense, the pitching. I mean, the funk they went through. The Dodgers had a little funk right before the All-Star break, with the injuries, guys coming back, getting healthy, guys. So it's incredible how, just so much alike these. I'm looking forward to a great series. I mean, I don't think this is going to be one of those where, it's going 4-5, right? This is going 6-7, right? It's probably going 7, right? That's my opinion. I mean, is that your thinking too, Lance? This is going to be one of those just all-out fights, to the end, right?
Well, because once again, if we're talking about offenses and we're not expecting pitching masterpieces, then to your point, you would think that it probably has some length and substance to it. The only way that this series ends quickly is if we have an injury that we did not expect and somebody's removed from the lineup that could drastically change things. Or once again, if the Dodgers pull off what they did against the Mets and we see 9-0, 8-0 games, I don't know if the Yankees are going to have enough in the tank to stretch out this series. But if we see, for example, if this series is defined by 8-6 games, 9-8 games, 10-8 games, then yes, I would agree with you. We're probably going to get a 6 to 7 game series, and I wouldn't expect anything less.
Anything else, Roger?
No, I appreciate the time, Lance. I mean, it's great to learn about these Yankees. Obviously we don't see them a whole ton. We always hear the Yankees, right? The big bad Yankees in New York, right? And I don't know, maybe you guys are hearing the same thing, big bad Dodgers in New York, but it's going to be an awesome series, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's a fun series, both in reality and in maybe fairy tale land, if we use our imaginations about the history of both of these teams. But I mean, I don't know if Yankee fan, you bring up a good question, Roger. I mean, New York's always referred to the big bad wolf, so I guess that's not necessarily a surprise. But I would say if Yankee fans are overlooking the Dodgers, they haven't been paying close attention to what LA has done this season. And something tells me they're not. And also, just real quickly, they did play 3 games we probably should mention in the Bronx. I don't know about the two of you. I don't take anything away from those 3 games. And I'm not saying that just because the Dodgers won 2. It's just you had Glasnow pitch one of those games. He's not available anymore. Juan Soto didn't play all three because of a forearm injury. And both of these teams have drastically changed. I don't take much away from regular season baseball. How teams perform and players step up in the postseason is very different. So I wouldn't put much stock or substance into that. But there is at least that familiarity component that the Yankees and the Dodgers have seen a little bit of each other at some point this season.
Yeah, that's why I really didn't, touch on it in our previous conversations when we're discussing this World Series, is because it was just so long ago. The teams were definitely completely different. Yankees had their health issues. The Dodgers were the healthiest they were, and then we obviously saw what happened the next couple months. You mentioned Glass. Now he's not here. Yamamoto, he did start one of those games, probably the best start of his career, going, I think, 7 shutout innings, and then his shoulder, he pitched so well that his shoulder gave out and he had to miss a couple months. So obviously everything's different right now. To any Yankees fans that have kind of followed the Dodgers closely and are surprised that they are here, I think that's warranted, just because I'm a little surprised that they made it this far, given all the issues with the starting rotation and the pitching staff. If it weren't for the offense, it could just be a different story. So credit to those guys, 1 through 9. Yankees hitters, credit to those guys finally getting over the hump. First World Series appearance in 15 years coming up now. So 2009 was the last time they won it all. But I think it's just going to be a great series. I expected to go 6 or 7 games, and I'm just hoping that there's a lot of good games and it all starts, tomorrow for Friday. But Lance, I can't appreciate you more enough for coming on. Where can people find you? I know you have a bunch of shows out there, your social medias. Plug all that for anybody that, was delighted by your presence here today.
Well, I certainly appreciate the kind words and the opportunity to come on. Really enjoyed the conversation. As far as on social media is concerned, they can follow me. It's at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Obviously, I host the Believe in the Yankees podcast, which is on the same platform as you guys. And if they want analysis throughout the World Series from a little bit more of a Yankees perspective, feel free to follow and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. And then you could also hear me on Sirius XM. I host shows on Mad Dog Sports Radio Saturdays and Sundays from 8 a.m. to noon Eastern. I'm also on during the week, and I'm also on Sirius XM NFL Radio. If we have any football fans listening, I cover the NFL very closely, so I've got them covered from that standpoint. So if there's any Rams fans and Chargers fans listening, I am an equal opportunist. It's not all about New York. It's all 32 teams that I put under the microscope, and I promote all my shows on social media.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we look forward to this World Series. Best of luck to the New York Yankees. Like I said, I imagine it's going to be a good one. But other than that, that'll do it for this episode of the Bleed Los podcast. And this episode was brought to you by Bet Online.
This episode has been brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here.